In November 1970, Howard Zinn was arrested with others in a protest at a Boston Army base to block soldiers from being sent to Vietnam. On the day he was supposed to appear in court, he was also scheduled to go to Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, to debate the philosopher Charles Frankel on the topic of civil disobedience. He chose to defy the court order to both explain and practice his commitment to civil disobedience. He flew to Baltimore, spoke in the debate, and came back to Boston to teach his class the next morning at Boston University. 2 detectives were waiting outside the classroom and hauled him off to court, where he was sentenced to a few days in jail. Here is the text of Howard's speech at Johns Hopkins.
I start from the supposition that the world is topsy-turvy, that things are all wrong, that the wrong people are in jail and the wrong people are out of jail, that the wrong people are in power and the wrong people are out of power. That the wealth is distributed in this country and the world in such a way as not simply to require small reform, but to require a drastic reallocation of wealth. I start from the supposition that we don't have to say too much about this, because all we have to do is think about the state of the world today and realize that things are all upside down. Daniel Berrigan is in jail, a Catholic priest, a poet who opposes the war. And J. Edgar Hoover is free, you see. David Dellinger, who has opposed war ever since he was this high and has used all of his energy and passion against it, is in danger of going to jail. The men who are responsible for the My Lai massacre are not on trial. They are in Washington serving various functions, primary and subordinate, that have to do with the unleashing of massacres, which surprise them when they occur. At Kent State University, 4 students were killed by the National Guard, and students were indicted. In every city in this country, when demonstrations take place, the protesters, whether they have demonstrated or not, whatever they have done, are assaulted and clubbed by police, and then they are arrested for assaulting a police officer. Something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong when we ship 10,000 bombs full of nerve gas across the country and drop them in somebody else's swimming pool so as not to trouble our own. So you lose your perspective after a while. If you don't think, if you just listen to TV and read scholarly things, you actually begin to think that things are not so bad, or that just little things are wrong. But you have to get a little detached and then come back and look at the world, and you are horrified. So we have to start from that supposition that things are really topsy-turvy. And our topic is topsy-turvy, civil disobedience. As soon as you say the topic is civil disobedience, you're saying our problem is civil disobedience. That is not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience. Our problem is the numbers of people all over the world who have obeyed the dictates of the leaders of their government and have gone to war, and millions have been killed because of this obedience. We recognize this for Nazi Germany. We know that the problem there was obedience, that the people obeyed Hitler. People obeyed. That was wrong. They should have challenged. They should have resisted. And if we were only there, we would have showed them. Even in Stalin's Russia, we can understand that. People are obedient, all these herd-like people. Remember those bad old days when people were exploited by feudalism? Everything was terrible in the Middle Ages. But now we have Western civilization, the rule of law. The rule of law has regularized and maximized the injustice that existed before the rule of law. That is what the rule of law has done. When in all the nations of the world, the rule of law is the darling of the leaders and the plague of the people, we ought to begin to recognize this. We have to transcend these national boundaries in our thinking. Nixon and Brezhnev have much more in common with one another than we have with Nixon. J. Edgar Hoover has far more in common with the head of the Soviet secret police than he has with us. It's the international dedication to law and order that binds the leaders of all countries in a comradely bond. That's why we're always surprised when they get together. They smile, they shake hands, they smoke cigars. They really like one another, no matter what they say. Yossarian was right. Remember in Catch-22? He'd been accused of giving aid and comfort to the enemy, which nobody should ever be accused of. And Yossarian said to his friend Clevenger, "The enemy is whoever is going to get you killed, whichever side they're on." And we must remember that our enemies are not divided along national lines, that enemies are not just people who speak different languages and occupy different territories. Enemies are people who want to get us killed. The law is the Bill of Rights. In fact, that's what we think of when we develop our reverence for the law. So you have to be careful when you say, "I'm for the law, I revere the law." What part of the law are you talking about? I'm not against all law, but I think we ought to begin to make very important distinctions about what laws do what things to what people. What we are trying to do, I assume, is really to get back to the principles and aims and spirit of the Declaration of Independence. This spirit is resistance to illegitimate authority and to forces that deprive people of their life and liberty and right to pursue happiness. And therefore, under these conditions, it urges the right to alter or abolish their current form of government. And the stress had been on abolish. But to establish the principles of the Declaration of Independence, we are going to need to go outside the law, to stop obeying the laws that demand killing or that allocate wealth the way it has been done, or that put people in jail for petty technical offenses and keep other people out of jail for enormous crimes. My hope is that this kind of spirit will take place not just in this country, but in other countries, because they all need it. People in all countries need the spirit of disobedience to the state. The state, which is not a metaphysical thing, but a thing of force and wealth. And we need a kind of declaration of interdependence among people in all countries of the world who are striving for the same thing.
Delivered it a lot better than I did. Yeah. I guess, maybe I'm going. It's my turn. I'm so wrapped up in myself.